This tiny, scratched-up dime looks like 10 cents, but one of these sold for over $450,000, and it was pulled from ordinary pocket change. Most people would have spent it without a second thought. The 1994 dime with a P mint mark might look like the most ordinary coin in your pocket. It's small, it's modern, it's common, and most people wouldn't give it a second glance. But here's what almost nobody realizes. Under the right conditions, that simple little P can turn a 10-cent coin into a collector's prize worth hundreds, even thousands of dollars. Now let's slow down and look closely. In 1994, millions of dimes were struck at the Philadelphia Mint. For years, Philadelphia coins didn't even carry a mint mark. So when you see that small P on a dime, it already tells you something important. This coin was made in Philadelphia during the era when mint marks were standard. That little letter is usually found just above the date on the front of the coin, right near Franklin Roosevelt's neckline. At first glance, a 1994 P dime looks completely ordinary. You'll see Roosevelt facing left. You'll see the word Liberty along the left side, In God We Trust near the bottom, and the date 1994 next to that tiny P. Flip it over, and you'll see the torch in the center, an olive branch on one side, an oak branch on the other, and the words United States of America and one dime. Nothing special, or is there? Here's where it gets interesting. While most 1994 P dimes are only worth face value, certain examples have sold for hundreds, and in rare high-grade cases, over $1,000. And the difference isn't something complicated or technical. It comes down to condition, shine, and tiny details most people overlook. First clue, look at the surface. If your 1994 P dime looks dull, worn, or gray from circulation, it's probably just worth 10 cents. But if it still has bright, mirror-like shine, especially if it looks almost like it was never used, that's when collectors start paying attention. Coins that were saved early and never circulated can sometimes grade extremely high. And in the coin world, a tiny jump in grade can mean a huge jump in value. We're talking about coins that look nearly flawless under magnification. No scratches on Roosevelt's cheek. No heavy marks in the fields. Strong, crisp lines in the hair. Clear details in the torch flame on the back. Now here's something many people don't know. In 1994, some dimes were struck with exceptionally strong detail and clean surfaces. A top-condition 1994 P dime graded at the very highest mint state levels has sold for serious money. Why? Because collectors compete fiercely for the best of the best. Even though millions were made, only a tiny fraction survive in near-perfect condition. That means if someone pulled a roll from the bank in 1994 and tucked it away untouched, those coins today could be surprisingly valuable. Second clue, look for unusual errors. Even with modern coins, mint mistakes happen. And when they do, collectors get excited. Check your 1994 P dime carefully for off-center strikes, where the design looks shifted to one side. Double strikes, where the image appears stamped twice. Clipped planchets, where part of the coin's edge looks curved or missing. Strange bumps, extra metal, or areas where the design looks doubled. A genuine mint error on a 1994 P dime can easily push the value far above face value. Some error dimes from the 1990s have sold for hundreds depending on how dramatic the mistake is. And here's the part that really builds suspense. Most people never inspect their dimes closely. They drop them in jars, spend them at gas stations, or ignore them entirely. But inside those jars could be a nearly flawless 1994 P that survived untouched for decades. It might look like an ordinary shiny dime, but under magnification, it could be one of the finest known examples. Collectors pay premiums for coins graded MS-67, MS-68, and higher. At those levels, we're talking about coins that look almost perfect. A single tiny mark can separate a 10-cent coin from a $1,000 coin. Think about that for a moment. The difference between 10 cents and four figures might be a microscopic scratch you can barely see. That's why condition matters so much. If you think you found a particularly sharp, bright 1994 P dime, do not clean it. Cleaning destroys value instantly. Even rubbing it with a cloth can leave hairline scratches that collectors spot immediately. Leave it exactly as it is. Instead, Place it in a soft holder and consider having it professionally graded if it truly looks exceptional. A certified high-grade example carries much more trust in the market. Now let's talk about realism. The average worn 1994 P dime is not rare. Millions were made. Most are worth face value. But that's exactly what makes this exciting. Because almost everyone assumes they're all worthless beyond 10 cents, which means valuable high-grade examples sometimes sit unnoticed. And don't forget about proof coins. While proof dimes were primarily made in San Francisco with an S mint mark, occasionally people confuse shiny coins from circulation with proofs. A true proof has a mirror-like background and frosted design details. If you ever see a 1994 dime that looks unusually reflective and crisp, double-check the mint mark. If it's an S, that's a different story entirely. But even staying focused on the P mint mark, your mission is simple. Check the shine. Check the details. Check for errors. Look at Roosevelt's cheek and jawline. Those areas show wear first. Examine the torch lines on the reverse. Are they sharp and fully defined? Look for full bands on the torch, clear separation in the horizontal bands. Strong band details can increase collector demand significantly. Next coin. The 1965 dime is one of the most misunderstood coins in American history, and that confusion is exactly what makes it so exciting. At first glance, it looks ordinary. Just another Roosevelt dime. You've probably handled dozens without thinking twice. But here's the twist. 1965 was the year everything changed. Up until 1964, dimes were made of 90% silver. That means every 1964 dime and earlier contains real precious metal. But in 1965, the U.S. Mint switched to a copper-nickel-clad composition. Silver was removed from circulation dimes almost overnight. Almost. Because during that transition year, something unexpected happened. Some 1965 dimes were accidentally struck on leftover 90% silver planchets from 1964. And those coins are worth a fortune. Let that sink in. A 1965 dime that looks completely normal could secretly be made of solid silver, and one of these rare transitional errors has sold for thousands of dollars. So how can you tell? First, look at the edge of the coin. A normal 1965 dime has a visible copper stripe running through the edge. That reddish-brown line in the middle is the copper core sandwiched between nickel layers. You can see it clearly if you tilt the coin sideways. But if your 1965 dime has a solid silver-colored edge with no copper stripe, your heart should start beating faster. Because that's your first clue. A genuine 1965 silver error dime will weigh slightly more than a standard clad dime. A normal clad dime weighs about 2.27 grams. A silver dime weighs about 2.5 grams. That small difference doesn't sound like much, but in the coin world, it's massive. Collectors have paid $7,000, $8,000, even more for authenticated 1965 silver error dimes. Now imagine finding that in a jar of spare change. But that's not the only reason the 1965 dime is important. Because 1965 was also the first year the U.S. Mint removed mint marks from coins. That's right, you won't see a D or an S on standard 1965 circulation dimes. The Mint removed mint marks temporarily to discourage collectors from hoarding coins during the silver shortage. So if you see a mint mark on a 1965 dime, stop immediately. It could be extremely rare. There are a few proof error pieces known with mint marks, and those command serious money. A 1965 dime with an S mint mark in proof format is a major collector prize. These coins were not supposed to exist in regular circulation. Now let's talk about condition. Even regular 1965 clad dimes can be worth far more than face value if they are in exceptional condition. Coins graded at the highest mint state levels, especially with strong strike details, can sell for hundreds. Look closely at Roosevelt's cheek and jawline. That's where wear shows first. If those areas are smooth and flat, the coin has circulated heavily. But if the surfaces are bright, clean, and nearly flawless, you may have something special. Turn the coin over and examine the torch. Collectors look for something called full bands. On the reverse torch, there are horizontal bands around the center. If those bands are sharply separated with clear, distinct lines, the coin becomes much more desirable. A high-grade 1965 dime with full bands can bring strong premiums at auction. And here's something most people miss. The 1982 dime looks completely ordinary. It's modern. It's common. It's something most people wouldn't even bother to pick up off the ground. But here's what makes it exciting. 1982 was the first year in modern U.S. history when Roosevelt dimes were struck without a mint mark from the Philadelphia Mint, and that tiny missing letter created one of the most famous modern dime errors ever discovered. Now let's slow down and look closely. In 1982, dimes were produced at multiple mint facilities. Coins from Denver carry a small d. Coins from San Francisco proofs carry an s. And coins from Philadelphia are supposed to carry a p. That's the key word, supposed to. Because early in 1982, something unusual happened. A small number of dimes were struck at the Philadelphia Mint without the P mint mark. The dies were missing the mint mark entirely. And those coins were released into circulation before the mistake was caught. Think about that for a moment. A coin missing just one tiny letter, something most people would never notice, became one of the most sought-after modern error coins in circulation. This variety is known as the 1982 no-P dime. And authenticated examples have sold for hundreds, sometimes over $1,000 in high grade. So how do you know if you have one? It's simple. Look at the front of your 1982 dime. Find the date. Just above the date, near Roosevelt's neck, you should see a small mint mark. If you see a P, it's normal. If you see a D, it's from Denver. If you see nothing at all, no letter, now you're holding something that deserves a very close look. But here's where you need to be careful. On worn coins, mint marks can sometimes fade or appear weak. Dirt or damage can also make it look like the mint mark is missing. That's why you need good lighting and maybe a magnifying glass. On a genuine no-P error, there will be absolutely no trace of a mint mark, not even a faint outline. The surface where the mint mark should be will look completely smooth and natural, not scratched off. If someone tried to remove the mint mark manually, you'd see damage, roughness, or tool marks in that area. A real no-P error will look clean, as if the coin was made that way, because it was. Now here's what makes it even more interesting. These no-P dimes were primarily discovered in circulation in the early 1980s, and many were spent before people realized what they were. That means most surviving examples today are in circulated condition. And that matters. Even in circulated grades, genuine 1982 no-P dimes can sell for $50, $75, $100, or more depending on condition. In higher uncirculated grades, values can climb dramatically. Some pristine examples have brought over $1,000 at auction. Imagine pulling a coin worth hundreds of dollars from a handful of change just because you noticed a missing letter. That's the thrill. But there's more to watch for in 1982. Collectors also look for strong strikes and clean surfaces. Even regular 1982 dimes in very high mint state condition, especially with sharp details, can carry premiums. Check Roosevelt's cheek and jawline for smooth, unbroken luster. Look for minimal contact marks. Turn the coin over and examine the torch. The horizontal bands across the center should be clearly separated. If those bands are fully defined, collectors call it full bands, and that can increase the value significantly in high grades. But let's be honest. The real star of 1982 is the missing mint mark. And here's the powerful part. Most people never check for mint marks at all. They glance at the date and move on. They don't know that 1982 was the first year Philadelphia dimes were supposed to carry a P. So they don't realize that the absence of that tiny letter is actually the entire story. It's one of the simplest coin checks you can possibly do. Find a 1982 dime. Look above the date. Is there a P? If yes, it's normal. If no, you may have found one of the most famous modern dime errors ever released. And remember, don't clean it. Don't polish it. Don't try to improve it. Next coin. The 1967 dime doesn't look rare. It doesn't have a mint mark. It doesn't look old enough to be ancient. And it doesn't contain silver, at least that's what most people think. But here's the part that should make you sit up straight. Some 1967 dimes have sold for thousands of dollars, and a few rare transitional and error examples have brought in life-changing money. Let's break this down carefully. First, understand the year. From 1965 through 1967, the U.S. Mint removed mint marks from coins entirely. They were trying to discourage collectors from hoarding coins during the silver transition. So just like the 1965 and 1966 dimes, the 1967 dime has no mint mark at all. That's normal. If you see no mint mark on a 1967 dime, that alone does not make it rare. But here's where things get interesting. 1967 was still early in the clad era. The mint had recently switched from 90% silver to copper-nickel clad in 1965. During transitions like that, mistakes can and do happen. There have been rare cases where wrong planchets, leftover silver blanks, were used by accident in the mid-1960s. A 1967 dime struck on a silver planchet would be an extraordinary error and worth thousands upon authentication. So your very first check is simple. Look at the edge. A normal 1967 dime will have that visible copper stripe running through the edge. If you tilt it sideways and see that reddish-brown line in the center, it's standard clad. But if the edge is completely silver in color with no copper stripe at all, that's when you stop everything. That's when you weigh it. A normal clad dime weighs about 2.27 grams. A silver dime weighs about 2.5 grams. That tiny weight difference is the difference between pocket change and potentially thousands of dollars. Now let's talk about something most people overlook. Condition. The 1967 dime had massive production numbers. Hundreds of millions were struck. Because of that, most people assume they're all worthless beyond face value. But here's the truth collectors understand. Finding a perfectly preserved 1967 dime is surprisingly difficult. Most were heavily circulated. They were used, dropped, scratched, stacked in vending machines. So when a nearly flawless 1967 dime surfaces, one with blazing luster, sharp detail, and almost no marks, collectors pay attention. Look at Roosevelt's cheek first. That's the highest point of the design and shows wear immediately. If it's flat and dull, the coin has circulated heavily. But if it's bright, smooth, and glowing with original mint luster, you may have something special. Now flip it over. Study the torch on the reverse. In the center of the torch, you'll see horizontal bands. If those bands are clearly separated with strong, sharp lines, not blended together, collectors call that full bands. A high-grade 1967 dime with full bands can sell for hundreds of dollars. In extremely rare top-graded conditions, values can climb even higher. And here's something exciting. Because mint marks were removed during 1965 to 1967, people don't think to examine these coins closely. They assume they're boring. That's exactly why high-grade survivors sometimes go unnoticed. Now let's talk about errors. 1967 dimes are known for several types of collectible mistakes. Off-center strikes, where part of the design is shifted and missing. Clipped planchets, where a curved section of the coin appears cut off. Broad strikes, where the coin looks stretched with no defined rim. Die cracks, where raised lines appear across the surface. And occasionally, double die varieties, where parts of the lettering or date show noticeable doubling. Strong, dramatic errors can easily push values into the hundreds. And then there's one more layer of suspense. Special mint set coins. In 1967, instead of traditional proof sets, the mint produced special mint sets. These coins often have a sharper, more satin-like finish compared to regular circulation strikes. If your 1967 dime looks unusually sharp, with a slightly different texture and stronger detail, it could be from a special mint set. High-grade special mint set dimes, especially with full bands, have sold for impressive amounts. But remember, you're looking for simple clues. Check the edge for silver color. Check the weight if possible. Look for blazing original luster. Examine Roosevelt's cheek. Next coin. The 1998p dime is one of those coins almost nobody thinks to check. It's modern. It's common. It's something you've probably spent 1,000 times without a second thought. But here's the part most people don't realize. In the right condition, or with the right mint mistake, a 1998p dime can be worth hundreds, and in rare certified grades, even over $1,000. Now let's take a slow, careful look. First, find the date, 1998, and look just above it near Roosevelt's neckline. You should see a small P. That tells you it was struck at the Philadelphia Mint. In 1998, hundreds of millions of dimes were produced in Philadelphia. So at face value, this is a 10-cent coin. It's about how many survived in exceptional condition. And that's where things change. Most 1998p dimes went straight into circulation. They were stacked, dropped, scratched, tossed into vending machines, and spent over and over again. That means the vast majority today are worn, dull, and covered in tiny contact marks. Finding one in nearly perfect condition is much harder than people think. Here's what to check. Look at Roosevelt's cheek and jawline. That's the highest point on the coin and the first place to show wear. If it looks flat or dull, the coin has circulated heavily. Now tilt the coin under a light. Do you see strong, bright cartwheel luster spinning across the surface? Or does it look lifeless and gray? Collectors pay serious money for coins that still have blazing original mint shine. Next, flip the coin over and study the torch. This is critical. Across the center of the torch, you'll see horizontal bands. If those bands are sharply separated, not blended together, the coin may qualify for what collectors call full bands. Why? Because strong strike quality combined with near-perfect surfaces is rare. And when you get into the highest grading levels, coins that look almost flawless under magnification, prices can climb quickly. Certified examples in top mint state grades with full bands have sold for hundreds, and in some cases over $1,000. Now think about that. A dime from the late 1990s. Worth more than a mortgage payment. And most people would never even glance at it twice. But that's not the only reason to inspect your 1998p dimes. Modern coins are also known for mint errors. And errors are where things get exciting. Off-center strikes, where part of the design is missing. Clipped planchets, where the edge has a curved cutout. Broad strikes, where the rim looks stretched or flattened. Die cracks, which appear as raised lines across the surface. Doubling in the lettering or date. Even small but dramatic errors on modern dimes can push values into the $100 to $300 range or higher depending on eye appeal. And here's something subtle but important. Do not confuse damage with mint errors. If the coin looks scratched, bent, or gouged in a random way, that's damage. Damage lowers value. A true mint error looks clean and natural, as if the coin left the mint that way. Now let's talk about something people overlook. Proof coins. In 1998, the San Francisco Mint produced proof dimes with an S mint mark. Those have deep mirror surfaces and frosted details. They were sold in proof sets. If you ever see a 1998 dime with a mirror-like finish but it has a P mint mark, that would be extremely unusual and worth professional examination. But normally, a shiny mirror coin from 1998 should have an S, not a P. So your checklist for 1998p is simple. Check the mint mark, make sure the P is clear and normal. Examine the condition, bright, sharp, nearly flawless surfaces are key. Inspect the torch bands, strong separation increases value. Look for bold mint errors. And above all, never clean the coin. Cleaning instantly destroys collector value, especially on high-grade modern coins where tiny hairline scratches can mean the difference between 10 cents and hundreds of dollars. Now imagine this. Somewhere in a forgotten bankroll from 1998, or sitting in an old coin jar, there's a nearly perfect 1998p dime with blazing luster and full bands. It looks like nothing special. It feels like nothing special.